Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of your Brains Coach podcast. My name is Angela Sharina. I'm your host, I'm your Brains Coach, and it is my job here to bring to you all the best, recent, cutting edge, most useful and important brain body tools so you could take better control of your body, of your brain, better command of your body and your brain to make better decisions, to take more impactful actions to create the life experience that you truly desire. And guys, I could not be more excited about the book that I'm about to introduce to you. As promised, today is our book study day, and it couldn't resonate with the theme of this podcast more. And I believe anyone into self-development, personal growth mindset, becoming their best self, unlocking their full potential to the best of your ability, you should pick up that book and never leave it anywhere and go through it again and again and again and implement these tools that Adam Grant, the author of Hidden Potential, the Science of Achieving Great Things, these tools that Adam offers us. You should keep this book by your side. Definitely, as a coach, this is going to be something of a reference book that I'm going to get back to again and again and again for stories, for quotes, for different research, helping people, inspiring and empowering people to not give up on the potential that is hidden inside each of us. On the cover of this book, there is this beautiful diamond coming out of the rough stone. And that's what the book is about, helping us to figure out how to get that diamond out of that rough stone that we come out when we are being born, when we come into this life. And I want to just start with a couple of stories that resonated with me the most. We all read the same books, well, different books, but at some point we read the same books, and different stories, different data, different research, different facts, different pieces of that book come alive for us and really resonate. Like a few pieces, a few stories from this book, quotes just almost made me cry. You have this feeling when you're like something is coming up and you almost can feel tears coming to your eyes. So these two stories and a few other moments in this book definitely almost made me cry because it resonated so deeply what I've been experiencing and feeling. And Adam expressed that and gave us tool to work on those things. So super excited for you to read this book. But let me share with you a few tools that I found the most useful. And then obviously for all of the tools, I cannot cover the whole book on this podcast. It's probably going to take me like a few hours and I still would not be able to deliver it as well as as Adam does in the book. So first story that resonated with me was about this guy. He was a great baseball athlete basically since he was a kid. In the book, they gave him a name, Array. That is an abbreviation of his, I believe, first name, middle name, and R.A. as they call him in the book. So he was a great athlete from the moment when he was a kid, right? And everyone, he won some Olympic thing in college for his baseball abilities. But then before signing his first contract, a trainer, before signing a professional contract as an athlete, you're going to be obviously tested for your physical abilities, disabilities. So people on the other side of the contract don't lock themselves into some deal that down the road in the future can bankrupt them. And so he was assessed by trainers and then was asked to do an X-ray because that coach who was assessing him noticed something weird about his physique and how he operated the ball as a baseball player. And so on that X-ray, and remind you, by that point, his future was almost determined for him. He was so good that everyone thought he would be this world-class baseball athlete destined for the Hall of Fame. And so he did the X-ray, and they found something wrong with his ligament in his arm. He wouldn't be able to swing as other professionals in baseball do. And what was prognosed to him was deterioration of his abilities. And basically, the coach was assessing him, told him, like, your career is probably over. Nobody's gonna sign you with that condition. And he progressively got worse in his game after that. And at some point, he was even called like the worst player ever. He was given all these opportunities, obviously, because of his previous track record. But then he started to pitch worse and worse and worse, and even again was called like one of the worst. But he loved the game so much. He was so good at it for so long. And then life threw him curveball that they'll need to do to be able to do in baseball. Was kind of ironic. But then he didn't give up. So by the age of 30-something, he was called one of the worst baseball athletes out there, coming from the background of being one of the best. He didn't want to give up. And there was one technique that was kind of wild, and only 2-3 people in the whole industry knew how to do it. There is a name for that specific ball. It was straight ball. Well, I'm not going to get into baseball details. I'm not a baseball person. But anyhow, only a couple of people knew how to do that, and that was something that was possible for him to get back into the arena of world-class baseball players. And so he decided, okay, I'm just gonna give my best to master this, and becoming another one of the few in the world's people mastering this odd ball that was highly unpredictable, really hard to predict how it's gonna go, etc. And that's why nobody really mastered it. But there were a few people who were naturally good at it and worked in it. Anyhow, moving things forward, he went around the world, US actually, and talked to those few people who knew how to do that. He started to get better and better, found coaches who believed in him. Then, long story short, he got to a point where he started to get really good, and then he stumbled, he plateaued. I didn't know what was wrong with him, and a lot of doubts started to get into his head. And he's like, I need a reset. I need to do something where I can feel I can handle hard and challenging things. So he decided to climb Kilimanjaro mountain, and everyone thought you're crazy, just take a break, clear your head. He's like, no, I need to do something that's gonna not just clear my head, but makes me feel powerful and capable again. So he climbed that mountain, and it was hard, and he came back almost a new person with this power inside of him. And then also new thoughts, new ideas, of kind of a fresh look at what he was doing and how he was doing it. And so after that, he did become one of the top world's athletes, making his pitch in that weird fashion that only a couple of people in the whole world, in the whole industry, knew how to do. And for me, it felt like I might be still looking for my perfect pitch technique. I'm doing all of these things, but they're not exactly, putting me where I want to be, to the level of growth, of development, of mastery where I want to be. And I'm feeling like I'm still discovering that pitch that only I can throw that well and that perfectly. And when I do that, when I do find that pitch, that technique that works specifically for me, there is going to be no limit to what I can do, and people will be blown away by what is possible. And my whole motivation, inspiration is to inspire more people to tap into their human potential. Yesterday I was at Africa Arena and talking to a lot of VCs and founders, and sharing with them very often that my core passion is human potential, that I want to help more people. And of course, I want to do it myself to unlock as much of their potential as possible, and also helping founders, helping leaders to make more ideas succeed, to make our world a better place, so more and more of us could tap into that fuller potential. Anyhow, so I felt like I'm still looking for that pitch. I'm 36 years old, but I haven't quite found it. And so the story inspired me to keep going, seek advice and tips and read biographies, look at people who master different fields. You'll find it. Just keep looking. If you truly love, if you're truly passionate about this thing, this human potential, and you believe in what you do and who you want to become, just keep looking. Look at different directions, different pathways. Like, by the way, R.A., this baseball player, he had to kind of start from scratch learning this new technique, and he had to go backwards before he could move forward to the level where he saw himself being and mastering his craft. So sometimes you have to go back and start from scratch, start from first principle that Elon Musk talk about. You have to break your game before you can build it to the world-class level. So that's also been a huge lesson for me, to look into other different ways and not being afraid to start again, to then move along different paths that might actually be a better fit for me. That's why I opened myself to so much more test and experimentation and testing different ideas and opinions and listening to so many more people. By the way, in the book, there is really good guidance on how to actually seek guidance and mentorship from people. Like a few of those seek out mentorship and advice and tips from different people, but those people have to be, credible in their field, not some random people. They should know you ideally and care about you. So like a very nice framework for the best mentors and guides you can have in your life. Don't just ask random people, or even like your parents. They might not be in the field where you're trying to deliver mastery. They might have no idea what you're talking about. And so asking them for advice and tips, especially if you're pursuing a different path, also you're going to learn this in the book, might not be the greatest idea. In fact, it isn't, based on all the research. So be careful about who you ask advice from. So that's the takeaway from this story. Keep looking for your perfect pitch. Just make sure you find something that you truly care about, and then trust there is something that only you can do to the level of this master. So keep looking for that, and keep testing different paths, approaches, and techniques and tools, exploring different ways. Don't just there is this saying by Albert Einstein, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So this kind of applies here. Try different things. And that's another big takeaway for me. And sometimes you would have to start from almost ground zero before you can find the path that works better for you. So that's the story of Array, and it was in the section on motivation. And this chapter was about getting unstuck. The second story that really resonated with me was about this kid. His name is Jose, and he grew up in Mexico in a family of farmers, and his family struggled a lot. They had to move a lot to find work, to sell fruits literally of their labor. And then he couldn't really get good schooling because of their moving, because he had to work so much. But as a kid, he watched astronauts from Apollo landing and flying into space, and that ignited his passion. His dream was to fly into space and become an astronaut and work at NASA. But where he started, everyone would say it's like impossible. The people that get into NASA, and plus he was, a kid in Mexico, a child of farmers. It was almost impossible, but nobody actually told him it was impossible, not people around him, and he believed it was possible. So he was getting after all the education he could get, and then as soon as he could, he applied to different schools and went to college and got degrees and worked on all the different skills, all the different opportunities that were available to him. And he started applying at NASA at some point, and he was rejected so many times, like many, many times, because his resume, the format that they had at NASA, that his resume wasn't exactly comparable to resumes of people from top Ivy League schools with all the internship opportunities, research opportunities that they had. His just resume of the stuff he did professionally just didn't compare well. And also, there was a section to mention his story, his background, where he came from and what he had to overcome to get to this level where he could apply to NASA. So he never shared this story because Jose was almost ashamed and thought that people would think less of him knowing his background. And so he never mentioned that. But long story cut short, he actually got into NASA and he told his story. He shared his story, I believe, in one of the applications. So he got the opportunity to get into NASA. He got accepted eventually. And interviewers at NASA asked him, why haven't you shared your story before? And he said, I was ashamed that it would actually play against me. And so he was accepted to work at NASA. On many attempts, and he almost gave up, and then his wife, I believe, is the one who made him apply once again the time that he got accepted, that he shared his story, at least bits and pieces. And so people at NASA asked him, why didn't you share your story before? And he shared that he was afraid to do so. And then he worked there, he did his best, and finally he was flying to space and became an astronaut. And for me, it resonated that well because I also don't come from the background that a lot of best coaches in my industry come from. I didn't study everything that they study. I just worked as a coach for 15 years and read all of the books and applied it and just kept growing myself, learning from as many sources as possible, right? I got some certifications, obviously. But if you compare it to the best people in the industry who I want to work along with, top of the world, and that's where I want to be because I have that kind of passion for coaching and helping people to reach their full potential. So I always feel like not sharing my story because I feel that that's gonna downgrade who I am. But maybe like Jose, I need to do it more and actually showing people where I came from and what I had to do to get to where I am speaking and tech conferences around the world and having my mentors or people I exchange emails, one of the top in my industry, and interviewing all these people for my podcast. Where I come from Siberia, Russia, from the background I came from, it was quite an unlikely trajectory that I would even end up here where I am shooting for the goals that I am shooting for. And what I learned from this story and what this story inspired me to keep pushing my own boundaries and to keep getting after opportunities, keep applying, but also importantly, keep working on myself because Jose, in the process of applying multiple times to NASA, he kept building up his skills because he thought, well, if I build this skill, if I put this on my resume, that's going to resonate with people. But only the funny part of the story, only when he accepted where he came from and he shared that struggle, that journey, that was what impressed people at NASA, his journey and how he had to work so hard to get to that place where he even had a chance to apply to NASA. And the moral of the story, the hardships that you had to overcome to get where you are, share them, because chances are people will look into that and see the qualities that you had to develop to get where a lot of people might have gotten just getting easier opportunities in life. So what made me cry is like, Angela, don't be afraid to express where you come from, who you truly are, and what you had to overcome, what qualities you had to build to get there. And this process of growth, this 20 years of working on yourself, don't be afraid to tell stories about that. And when I do, actually, that's when I get like more views, more likes, and people find what I say a lot more fascinating and want to learn more and more and more. So share your story, share your struggles, share your journey, share the qualities that you acquired because of that it's not your innate talent, but you actually had to work really, really hard to develop yourself in that way. And things were not just given to you. And then just keep working on your skills. If you want to be at the arena with the world's best, you have to work like they do. And it's a lot of work. So make sure you know what you sign up for and what you wish, what you desire for, and how much work it's going to take. And don't be afraid to share your story. In fact, that's your only way to get where you want to go. So these two stories really like brought something from inside of me and made me emotional, made me open up. Like my heart felt so freed up. And even now, like I have almost tears in my eyes telling you this story. So the beautiful thing about this book, every single point is told, every single piece of research is told through the story that will, some of the stories will really resonate with you, with where you are on your journey, and will give you practical tools to, at the end of the book, Adam gives 40 practical tools and strategies to work on these skills, on these concepts of unlocking our hidden potential that he mentioned throughout the book in stories. So in the summary, in the epilogue, he actually gives 40 different strategies. Like one of those strategies, if you want to get better, you'll need people's feedback. But here is the caveat. Don't ask for feedback when you're asking people to help you to get better, but ask for advice. So literally, don't ask people, how did I do? Ask them, what can I do to get better at X? And then people will start telling you. And I actually experienced that, and I couldn't put my finger on it, like why sometimes people will give me a lot of tips and advice and sometimes would just not tell me much at all, or will give me something generic. And that was exactly that. When I asked for how did I do, what do you think, something like that, people would not tell me much because they were either afraid to tell me that I wasn't great there and there because they were my friends, they didn't want to hurt my feelings, so were not sure if they're good enough to give me that feedback. Or people were like, I didn't like it and that was it. Or I liked it and that was it. But then when I started asking, one example, I was moderating my first panel and I asked, from your perspective, knowing me, how can I get better at moderating this panel? And that's where I get very precise advice about how to ask questions or how to give people turns, etc. The whole flow of the panel, of the moderation of the panel. So don't ask, like, how did I do? Ask, how can I get better at X? Be specific. That's like one of the practical strategies that Adam brings. He doesn't just tell you stories to motivate you. He actually gives you advice to work on different aspects of ourselves to help us unlock more of our potential. A few things that the book is about that you might be interested in. So he starts with the section of the book that is dedicated to how to develop that potential, how to tap into our hidden skills. So things like seek discomfort, seek challenges, make a lot of mistakes. There was a story about polyglots who learned a lot of languages. And so their feature was not the talent. In fact, a lot of them struggled with languages, but that at some point they decided to just make a ton of mistakes and just iterate, test. And that's what distinguishes the best polyglots out there. So make mistakes, seek discomfort. That's where you grow and you'll start uncovering more and more of what you're capable of. Of course, it's going to be uncomfortable, but that's the only way to know how you can grow and where your potential is. If you only do what you're good at, guess what? You're not going to be growing or uncovering anything. Learn like a sponge, another one in this section. And it's about being relentless, about like asking questions, being curious and asking for feedback and directing your growth strategy. Like what books do I want to read? What courses do I want to take? What people experts I want to talk to, and learn out of your desire to get better, not to show off anything. That's what top people who unlocked a lot of their potential do. They just they connect with their innate natural desire to learn for the sake of learning, of getting better. Excellence versus perfection. That actually was the chapter about Adam's personal journey as a diver who had like basically no potential to becoming any good, but then a coach told him, I seen you that you can become one of the top college athletes if you apply yourself with all of your determination and focus. But then at some point in the story, when Adam got much better and the coach told him, actually, with where you started, you are the person who grew the most. He trained a lot of athletes, but the difference between where they started and where they went was not as big as Adam's was. So the growth, that what matters, not how far you go, but where you started and how far you traveled. So anyhow, in this chapter, they talk about how no diver, no matter how good they are, Olympic athletes, they're never perfect. They just excellent. They have a package that is so good, that is excellence. But there are always things that can be worked on, improved. There is no such thing as perfection. So that was also a great chapter for me. Don't try to be perfect. Just figure out what excellence, what really good looks like. And with all the different combinations of things you can put together, deliver on that as much as possible. You'll never be perfect, but you can be excellent. Then there is a section on motivation, things like what to do when the thing that you love starts feeling like a job. There is a tool about introducing play and not being stuck in doing the same things and not being afraid of experimenting. So that's how you transform daily grind into something that still inspires and energizes you. Play, experiment, explore your options, get different hobbies and different things you want to do. Then there was the chapter on getting unstuck and the array baseball story. And then there was a chapter in motivation about how interacting with each other in different ways can help us to stay motivated. For example, when we want to learn something better, we should try to teach it and make other people get better. That's when we ourselves learn the best. There was this story about this African-American guys who were invited to join the Navy in US when African-Americans were not really accepted there, and how everyone thought they would fail, but they just teamed up and started learning together, teaching each other, like, one guy would be good at that and he would teach that the whole team, and then they would rotate and share their talents. And that's how they got to be called the Golden 13, basically the best in the whole Navy. And they were tested again and again and again because nobody believed that they actually achieved this result. So the power of teamwork and coaching each other together, we are so much better when we work on trying to help each other to improve. And they talk about in this chapter about this coaching effect. When you actually try to help someone else, your confidence grows in your own ability to overcome the same thing. So if you doubt your ability to do something, help someone else to get better at that. And that's where your confidence grows, and that's where you learn yourself better. They call this coaching effect. And then there is also Golem effect, when somebody with authority doesn't believe in you. You actually will choke and your performance will get worse if you allow that to get into your head, right? Golem effect, that I never heard of, was kind of interesting. I'm going to be more mindful about who I invite into my feedback. Then underdog effect, that actually when somebody who is not related to you, not really doesn't qualify to give advice in this specific area of expertise, when they doubt you, like random strangers, that actually very often would create the opposite effect, underdog effect, when you're doing your best to prove them wrong. Quite interesting, right? Like different people give you negative feedback and it either fires you up or makes you choke and make you perform worse and undermine your potential. So that was quite interesting for me. I'm like, yeah, definitely need to be careful about what kind of feedback I look at. And then in the same chapter, they have this story about a woman with heart condition failing at climbing Everest, but then he did at the end, and she was also an athlete, so everyone was watching her. It's a very interesting story. But what made her succeed eventually is two things, and these are very important, and I find them very fascinating because I use them in my life so often. Whenever I find myself in a place when I start losing motivation, I look into, okay, who am I doing it for? I'm doing it for my family, but also for other entrepreneurs in the struggle, people who might not come from a lot, but have huge potential and huge passion and ready to work hard for this thing, their dream, their craft, whatever it is. So I'm here to help to inspire more of them. People like myself, like kids, not coming from, again, a lot, but believing that they can deliver mastery in a specific domain that nobody else can, right? So looking at who you're doing it for will motivate you. So the same happened to this climber, this woman. She had a friend who died and she was doing her climb for her. And that's what motivated her to not give up and eventually succeed. And then there was this phrase, if you're bootstrapping yourself to succeed, make sure that you attach those bootstraps to other people's boots. And that was about finding people who believe in you and letting them to elevate your game as well. Other interesting pieces of information were about how living in a certain geographical area, but more specifically being surrounded by people who succeed at certain domain, like being in an area where there are a lot of female scientists, for example, make girls succeed at science better. So people, your social environment really matters. So sometimes if you want to give your kid a better chance in life, you might want to consider, based on research, moving to an area with a lot of people succeeding in that area. There was a beautiful story about schools in Finland, how Finland didn't rank well in world's rating for schooling, for education. But then they decided to apply a new strategy when they started to work with many of the kids individually to some degree to make every kid succeed, no matter how hard it was for them to start or how well or not so well they did at school. They paid attention. They created personalized approach to every kid. And guess what? Finland got the highest scores at education for many, many years. And then they kind of a little bit dropped, but still were in the top. And then they figured out a different thing. So interesting, very interesting data and the teaching methods to unlock more in our kids that Finland applied. Then there is a chapter about teams and how the perfect solution actually comes from all the different sources on the team, in the organization, in the company. And so the trick here is, how do you make more people feel comfortable to sharing their ideas, even on the subject that their job might not be related to? And then how to create not corporate ladder of transferring information, but make it more sideways, so what they call lattice system. And diamonds in the rough, that was the Jose's story, but also they talk about and give in the book better strategies for sorting out applicants for the job, giving them experience, creating conditions for them to thrive instead of looking to make them, almost choke in the interview, right? And also how how to actually, what are the best way to evaluate candidates. And it turns out it's giving them assignments and taking them through different experiences and different tasks, different tests right then and there, and seeing what they do, how they perform, what kind of personal qualities they show. And that is a much better way to find a better candidate than just looking at their stats. Like they looked at Jose's stats, right? He might not have what Ivy League candidates had, but when it comes to personal development and qualities that he had to cultivate, they were a lot more. And what research shows, also brought up in this book, it's not the technical knowledge that at the end would matter how far this candidate or this person will go, but those personal qualities and the training and everything that the person had to do to cultivate those, that would matter the most. And on that note, I will finish this book study. Obviously, as you probably can imagine, I did not cover even half of the book. I covered with you what resonated with me, the tools, the strategies, the mindset pieces that are applicable to my life, that spoke to me the loudest. So pick up the book, and it's an amazing read. And the research is just mind-blowing and changing. And there are practical strategies and tools that you can start applying today to unlock more of your potential. And guys, every one of you has so much that you can bring into this world. So much talent, so much potential, so many gifts, and so many lives you can change. Every single one of you, and myself including, we are truly diamonds that can amplify that light that comes in a million ways, creating a better world all together, and each of us individually. Well, it turns out together is better, but so use the tools, use the strategies. Do not settle for where you come from, for who you think you are. Feel into your heart, realize that even you don't know how much you're capable of. Find your passion by trying a bunch of things. Find what you love. And don't let anyone stop you from becoming better and better and better and better at it, until the whole world will be astounded, will be astonished, will be mind blown by the things you'll do and achieve. So pick up the book, connect if you have questions. Angela, Brain Body Coach on Instagram, or Angela at brainbreakthroughcoach.com. Please share this podcast with all the diamonds in the rough out there. Share this podcast with at least one person who you believe it's going to inspire, motivate, help them grow, help them to tap more and more and more into their potential. So please share this podcast. Also, get a few of those books, give it to people you care about. And that's it for today. Keep tapping into your full potential, and you'll hear again from me very soon.